Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this opposite fan wire weave, and this is what it looks like. So you have these little fans from each side going in towards the middle and kind of interlocking with each other, you could say, alternating there from side to side. It gives a really nice effect and you almost get a bit of a zigzag pattern as well. The back looks more or less the same. There's a slight difference in the weave, so there's a front and a back to it, but it's not too noticeable unless you look closely. So if you want to learn how to make this weave here, then keep watching. So then as for the wires that we need, what I have here is 6 lengths of a 1mm wire, and this is going to be the base wires. So we need 6 to achieve the pattern of the weave that we need. And then as for the weaving wire, I have 2 lengths here of a 0.4mm wire. So we need the 2 separate lengths to achieve this weave. We're going to use the 0.4mm here to wrap around our base wire. So then we need to start out our weave here. So what I'm going to do first of all is grab 1 length of my 1mm wire, so the base wire, and then also one of my lengths of the weaving wire. So first of all I need to attach this, so I'm just going to put my weaving wire behind it and keep hold of that little tail, and then I'm just going to wrap this around the base wire a couple of times, and this is just to attach it to get started. So like that. And then we need to get straight into the weave. Now we need to start out with kind of 1/2 first of all, so just the basic fan weave. And I'm going to bring in my next base wire here, put that above the other one and on top of the weaving wire, just like that. Then I have my weaving wire coming from behind, technically now in between the 2 wires, and then coming down below here. Then I'm going to take it above the top of both of the base wires and back around the back of both of them as well, just like that. And then we need to come up between the 2 that we just wrapped across the top of, and then push that down, and it helps keep it nice and tight as well. And then we need to go around the top one, the new one that I added in, on its own just once, and then push that down, just like that. And then having the weaving wire coming back down behind and towards the bottom again there. So then we need to bring in the next base wire as we're building it here. Again, put that above the previous one and on top of the weaving wire, so just like that. And then the weaving wire is going to come across the top of all of the base wires. And always make sure, because obviously we're wrapping it across the top of a lot of base wires now, it's going to be another one as well. Just try and make sure that your wires, the weaving wire here, is still aligned next to each other and not crossing over previous wraps or anything. So just wrap it nicely like that. And then we need to come up between the top 2, so basically the middle one and the new one that we added in, up between that, like that. And then wrap around the top one on its own. And again, come down behind all of them. Make sure to squeeze or press your wraps nice and tight together so we get a nice and neat weave. And then we need to bring in another base wire. Again, place that above the others. So we now have our 4 here. And just like the other times, we need to go across the top of all of them. And this is kind of the midpoint of the little fan that we're making. So like that. So now we've moved upwards and stepped up every time. Now we need to step down again to get the other half of it. So what I need to do is come up in the middle of my base wires. So between the 2 middle ones, not between the new one and the 3rd one to wrap around the top one like we've done, because we need to step down. So I need to come behind 2 base wires. So just up through the middle ones there. And then we need to wrap around a single time around this 3rd one. That's the equivalent one that we wrapped around single just before the wrap across the top of all of them. And that's how we're stepping down. So around that and then down behind again. And just step down the next one. We need to go across the top of them. But then come down between the 2 that I just came down between as well. So in this case the 3rd and the 4th one. Press that all the way down. Come down behind again and then just step down again. We need to step down to make the next single wrap, but we need to do that and come up between the bottom 2 base wires to wrap around the 2nd from the bottom on its own. So then down between the middle ones and then press that down, and then the weaving wire is coming down below, take it across the top of them again, and now across the top of the bottom 2 base wires here. That means down in between the 2 middle wires, just like that. Come down behind them, and then we just need to come down and wrap around the bottom one on its own, just like how we started out on the other side there. So just wrapping around that single one, just like that. And in this case, what I'm going to do, I'm going to wrap this about 8 times. So that was 1, and we've basically finished off this little section. But I'm then going to do 8 in total. So that's 1, 2, 3, and 4. And every time I do that, make sure to push them tight. 5, 6, 7, and the final one, 8. Just like that. And then just make sure, if you can see any gaps there, just push it all nice and close together so you get a nice and neat weave. So this is now the first little section, and then we have 2 base wires left, and obviously the other weaving wire as well. So then to start the other one as well, I'm then going to take my other length of my weaving wire and then a new base wire, and then we need to attach this first of all, just like before. So I'm just going to put my tail, in this case I'm putting my weaving wire on top of the base wire. So I'm basically going to start wrapping around in the opposite direction, and then again coil the weaving wire around the base wire a few times. In this case I'm just going to do it a few more times than I did before, because it needs to cover a bit of a further area on the base wire. Obviously you can always add in some more at the end if you need to, with the little tail, if it's not quite reaching far enough. But something like this, just make sure it's pushed nice and close together. And then what we need to do is then also start adding in the other base wire. So I'm going to grab that and then lay it, in this case, below the first base wire that we took. And then we need to start the same weave, but we're kind of working the opposite direction. So now we're working from the top and it's coming downwards. So it's just going to be pointing in the opposite direction, because obviously we then need to put them together. So I have the weaving wire coming from behind. I'm going to need it to come across the front or the top of both of the base wires, and then back down behind, and then this is when we need to come up between the 2 base wires. That's exactly the same way we did it before. So between the 2 that we just wrapped across the top of, to wrap around now the bottom one on its own, just like that, and down behind both of them. So it's now coming, in this case, upwards. So now what we need to do is combine the 2 pieces, because now for the next step on this one we have to add in a new base wire, but we used all 6 of the loose ones. So that means we'll have to incorporate the one we already started and use that as the next one. So I'm just going to bring them together here and then just push them so they're sitting a bit better, correct according to each other. But obviously you can also always adjust that afterwards once we got started here. So you just got to hold it together to begin with, because obviously now we have 2 separate pieces that we need to weave together. So until we weaved a bit, it will then become more secure, because obviously we're going to weave across kind of the middle with both sides. So I have the weaving wire there behind, and then this is where I need to come across the top of them, but then across the top of 3 instead of 2, and that's the top 3 in this case. So these 3 here. So I need to come down between that wire, and then again behind the back of them, and then come up between the bottom one that you just wrapped and then the middle one out of the 3 that you just wrapped across the top of, up between there to wrap around that bottom one of the 3 by itself. So you can see we're working in the same way that we did in the first one. It's just working in the opposite direction. Again, push it close together and down behind all of them, and then across the top, and we're still stepping up because now we're reaching kind of the midpoint. That means instead of wrapping across the top of 3 wires that we just did, we need to wrap across the top of 4 wires there. So kind of stepping up. Obviously it's kind of working downwards, but stepping up regarding the weave. Another wire, so go down between those. So basically the bottom 2 and the 3rd one there, down between them. Make sure it's laying nice and flat next to each other and not crossing over each other here. And then behind again, and this is where we then need to start stepping downwards in the weave. So we're not going to come up between kind of the bottom two here that we just wrapped. We need to do the next one up because we need to wrap around the second one out of the 4 here from the bottom that we're currently working with. Push that down and then go down between the bottom 2 out of these 4, the group of the 4, because that's the equivalent again as the other side, the last single wrap that we did on the other side there. Push it close behind all of them and then stepping downwards or upwards depending how you look at it, downwards in the weave. We need to come down between the same wires, so we're going across the top of 3, the top 3 base wires, push it close together and then down behind, and then again stepping down to do the next single wrap. That's going to be around the second wire from the top. So we need to go between the top 2, just like that, and then down, so just wrapping around that second one on its own, and then behind again, back up to the top, and then we need to wrap over the top of those top 2 base wires there. And that's kind of the final little step on this fan, pointing in this direction. Push it close, and then we're just reaching the point where we need to go back to the single one. In this case that's the top one that we just need to wrap around now. So again, just like in the first one we did, I'm going to wrap my weaving wire here around this 8 times as well. So 2, 3, 4, pushing them nice and close together, 5, 6, 7 here, and the final one, 8, just like that. And then I'm just going to have a look at it here, make sure it's kind of sitting nice and everything is pushed close together as much as you can get it. And then there we have kind of the second little fan, but from the opposite direction, so they're kind of pointing up and down, alternating like that. So this is basically how you want to continue making the weave now. Obviously the kind of weaved sections right now can still move a little bit like this from side to side, but as we get further on they'll get more and more stable. So it's just a matter of kind of fixing them so you think they sit right. So kind of the point on each fan meets with about the middle of obviously the individually wrapped bottom or top wire on the opposite side. But then what you just do to continue is now move to the bottom one. So you always go to the opposite side than the one where you just did your fan and just do your next fan there. So I'm going to go to the bottom one, start my next section in the exact same way. So just making the fan here, stepping up first, 1 base wire at a time. Just got a little bit mixed up there. There we go, just wrapping around the single one. And then you'll start to see it's going to be building up. It can help as well sometimes if you can splay your wires out a little bit at the end like that. It makes it much easier to come in between. And obviously differentiate which one's which. You can see you're getting towards the middle here. Doing the kind of tallest point and then stepping down again. Making sure they're all flat next to each other. So you just kind of hold it together here. You could also use a spring clamp or a ring clamp at the beginning if you feel a bit more comfortable with that, because obviously trying to hold it together with this hand can be a little bit straining, but that's completely up to you. It can help a bit though if you feel that you need it. And the single one on the bottom then here, where again we then wrap 8 times again, but I've just done it the ones there just to show you then that we have this point where that's the next one, and they're going to be alternating just like that. So then I've made the bottom one. I obviously now need to go up and make the next top one up here that we're ready to start making that fan straight away. and then you just keep alternating like that. So that's how you make this weave, working with two separate weaving wires. So I'm going to continue this for a bit, make it a section of that to then show you what it looks like. So this is then what the weave looks like here, so I've gotten a bit further on. So you have these fans coming from both sides and just kind of interlocking with each other. It gives this really nice effect. And the back is very similar. There is a slight difference when you look close, but there's kind of a front and back to it, but it's not too different. So that's what it looks like. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make this wire woven Kumihimo bracelet. And these are the two versions that I have here. So it's the exact same thing, but I just have one that's just plain of the bracelet itself, and then I have one here where I've added in beads or gemstones. So you can see how different they could look, but it's the exact same basic technique underneath there. Now this one as well, I think because of all the texture in it, without adding the beads, the texture itself on the bracelet, I think it'd be quite nice to